My fiancé told me, don't tell my family you're just a mechanic, say you work in tech or something. I nodded and smiled. That night, I sent her family a link to the dealership website I own. This morning, she's blowing up my phone, accusing me of humiliating her on purpose. The moment I knew my relationship was in trouble wasn't when Amber asked me to lie about my career. It was the word she used before mechanic. Just, don't tell my family you're just a mechanic. I met Amber at a charity gala in downtown Portland 18 months ago. I was there overseeing the restoration of a vintage Ferrari we donated for the auction. I was in my element, sleeves rolled up, explaining the rebuild process to interested attendees. That's where Amber spotted me, assuming I was one of the mechanics who worked on the car. Her PR firm had organized the event, and she approached to thank me for the donation. I didn't correct her misunderstanding, simply saying I was with Portland European Motor Cars. We hit it off immediately. She was gorgeous, witty, and seemed genuinely interested in my stories about restoration projects and custom builds. We exchanged numbers, and I asked her out for dinner the following weekend. Our relationship progressed quickly. Within 6 months, we were spending most nights together at her downtown condo, though I maintained my own apartment in a converted industrial building closer to my business. I'm pretty private about my financial situation. Growing up without much money taught me to be cautious and modest with displays of wealth. I drive a 10-year-old BMW that I restored myself, wear simple clothes unless meeting clients, and reinvest most of my profits back into the business. To most people, I probably do just look like a well-paid mechanic. Throughout our relationship, I noticed little comments here and there. When I'd show up to meet her friends with grease still under my fingernails after a long day working on a special project, I still like to get hands-on with certain high-end restorations, she'd laugh nervously and say, "He works so hard at that garage of his." When we talk about my business, she'd refer to it as the shop, rather than what it actually was. Portland's largest independent luxury car dealership with a high-end restoration shop attached. I didn't correct her. Maybe that was my first mistake. But I figured she was simplifying things for her friends, who weren't car people. Plus, I've always identified more with the hands-on aspect of my work than the business title. The dealership operates under my holding company, MaxTech Automotive Group, so Portland European Motor Cars doesn't have my name plastered all over it. Our paperwork, website, and business cards all use the company branding rather than my personal identity. When I proposed at the 1-year mark, she said yes without hesitation. We kept our finances mostly separate. Another mistake, in retrospect. She never saw my business financial statements or tax returns, and I never pressured her to take an interest in that side of my life. She seemed to assume I made a decent living as a skilled mechanic, and I let her believe that. I'm not flashy with money, and most of my personal wealth is tied up in the business and real estate investments. Amber's family lived in Seattle, and we hadn't had a chance to meet yet due to COVID restrictions and their busy travel schedule. Her father was some kind of investment banker. Her mother ran a nonprofit, and her brother worked for Amazon. They were finally coming to Portland for the weekend, and Amber was visibly anxious about making a good impression. The night before the big dinner, as we were getting ready for bed, she dropped the bomb. "So, when we meet my parents tomorrow, could you maybe not tell them you're a mechanic?" she asked, examining her nails with intense focus. I paused, halfway through brushing my teeth. "What? It's just that they're kind of traditional. They have expectations about what kind of career their daughter's husband should have." I rinsed my mouth, buying time to process this. "And what kind of career is that?" "You know, professional, corporate. My dad would love it if you were in finance, but tech would be fine too. Just something respectable." That word hung in the air between us. Respectable. As if what I did wasn't. "So what exactly should I tell them I do?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. "You could say you work in automotive technology? Or maybe automotive sales and operations management. That's not even a lie, really. Just don't mention the mechanic part." I stared at her for a long moment. This woman, who I thought knew me, who I was planning to spend my life with, was ashamed of what I did for a living, or at least what she thought I did. Amber, do you even know what my business actually is? She looked confused. You run that garage on Burnside, right? Where you fix up fancy cars? In that moment, I realized she'd never actually visited my garage. She dropped me off a few times but had never come inside. When I talked about work, she'd nod along but rarely ask questions. I'd assumed she wasn't interested in cars. Now I understood she just wasn't interested in dating a mechanic. Right, I said finally. Fancy cars. I could have corrected her then. I could have explained that while yes, I had started as a mechanic, a damn good one who specialized in European luxury cars, I now owned a dealership that sold over $15 million in vehicles annually, employed 22 people, including 6 master technicians, and had just been featured in Auto Trader's list of top independent dealerships on the West Coast. I could have mentioned that the garage was actually a 15,000 square foot facility with a showroom that rivaled any official dealership. But I didn't. Instead, I nodded and smiled. Sure, I can talk about automotive technology, no problem. She beamed, kissed me on the cheek, and went to bed, oblivious to the shift that had just occurred in our relationship. I stayed up late that night, thinking. Then I did something that was either petty or perfect, depending on your perspective. I opened my laptop and composed an email to her parents. Looking forward to meeting you tomorrow. Amber has told me so much about you. I thought you might be interested in seeing what I do for work. Here's a link to my business website. I included the link to Portland European Motor Cars, with its sleek design, virtual showroom, and current inventory of Porsches, Mercedes, and BMWs. The About page featured a photo of me in a suit, standing in front of the building, with a brief bio detailing how I had started as a mechanic at 19, saved every penny, bought my first fixer-upper Porsche at 23, flipped it for double, and gradually built a business that now served clients from Seattle to San Francisco. I hit send, shut my laptop, and finally went to bed. The dinner the next evening started awkwardly. We met at an upscale steakhouse downtown, and as soon as introductions were made, Amber's father, Richard, fixed me with an appraising look. So, Amber mentioned you work with cars? Before I could answer, Amber jumped in. Max works in automotive technology and sales. He manages a whole team of specialists. I smiled. That's right. I own Portland European Motor Cars. We specialize in luxury European vehicles, sales, service, and restoration. Richard's eyebrows shot up. Portland European? On Burnside? With the big glass showroom? I nodded. I bought my last Mercedes there, about 6 months ago. S-Class, black on black. I remembered the sale. With the custom wheels and upgraded sound system, that was a beautiful car. Richard was now looking at me with newfound interest. I worked with that young sales manager, Chris, I think. Never met the owner. The paperwork all said Max Tech Automotive Group. That's my holding company, I explained. I prefer to keep a low profile and let my team handle most client interactions. But yes, I'm the sole owner. Amber was staring at me, her mouth slightly open. Her mother, Catherine, jumped in with questions about how I'd built business, clearly impressed. Her brother asked about current inventory as he was considering a new Porsche. Throughout dinner, the conversation flowed easily. Richard and I discovered a shared passion for vintage sports cars. Catherine was interested in the charity work my dealership did with the local community college's automotive program. Even Amber's brother seemed to forget his initial skepticism. Amber, meanwhile, grew increasingly quiet. When her father invited me to join him for a golf weekend at his club the following month, she excused herself to the restroom. Her mother followed shortly after. When they returned, Catherine gave me a strange look, somewhere between amusement and apology. The rest of the dinner passed pleasantly enough, though Amber barely spoke. In the car on the way home, she exploded. Why would you do that? You deliberately humiliated me. I kept my eyes on the road. How exactly did I humiliate you? You know exactly how. You let me think you were just a mechanic this whole time, and then you blindsided me in front of my family. First of all, I never lied about what I do. You made assumptions. Second, I'm not just a mechanic. I started as a mechanic, and I'm still proud of that part of my career. That's how I learned the business from the ground up. But you knew what I thought. You could have corrected me at any time. Like last night, when you asked me to lie about my career because being a mechanic isn't respectable enough for your family? She fell silent, then tried a different approach. I just wanted to make sure they liked you. By having me pretend to be someone I'm not? Is that how our marriage is going to work too? Will I need to pretend to be something more respectable every time we see your family? We barely spoke for the rest of the night. She slept in the guest room. The next morning, her family came over for brunch before heading back to Seattle. The atmosphere was tense, but her parents were warm toward me. As they were leaving, Richard pulled me aside. Amber told her mother she didn't know the full extent of your business. Bit of a communication issue there, huh? I nodded, not wanting to throw Amber under the bus completely. Well, I'm impressed with what you've built. Takes guts and brains to create a successful business from scratch. My first car was a beat-up Chevy that I worked on myself. Started in the mailroom at my firm too. Don't let anyone look down on how you started. After they left, Amber and I had another argument. She accused me of sending the website link to her parents deliberately to make her look foolish. I pointed out that I was simply being honest about my career, something she had been unwilling to do. She said I should have told her about the full scope of my business earlier. I reminded her she'd never actually asked or shown much interest. Would it have mattered? I asked. Would you have still been embarrassed to tell your family I was a mechanic if you'd known I owned the business? Her hesitation was all the answer I needed. She left to stay with a friend that night. The next morning, a Monday, I went to work as usual. Around lunchtime, my phone started blowing up with texts from Amber. Her parents had apparently called her, concerned about our misunderstanding. Her father had sung my praises, saying she'd found a good one, and asking why she hadn't been clearer about what I did for a living. Her mother had been less subtle, asking directly if Amber had been embarrassed by my background as a mechanic. You've humiliated me in front of my entire family. Her final text read. They think I'm some kind of snob now. Was that your plan all along? I didn't respond immediately. I had a business to run, cars to sell, and employees who depended on me. But as I walked through my showroom that afternoon, looking at the gleaming vehicles and the team I'd built, I kept coming back to that word. Don't tell my family you're just a mechanic. That evening, I finally replied to her texts with a single message. I think we need to reevaluate our engagement. I want to be with someone who values me for who I am, not despite it. I'll be at my apartment tonight if you want to talk. She came over around 8 p.m., eyes red from crying. We talked for hours. She apologized repeatedly, saying she'd never really understood what I did because cars weren't her thing. She claimed her parents had always been judgmental about her boyfriends, and she was trying to avoid their criticism. But they loved you, she said, sounding almost bewildered. My dad hasn't stopped talking about your entrepreneurial spirit and how I picked a winner. That's not the point, Amber. The point is that you were ashamed of what you thought I did for a living. You asked me to lie about being a mechanic because it wasn't good enough for your family. I made a mistake. I was nervous about them meeting you. You've known me for a year and a half. We've been engaged for 6 months. And you never once bothered to really understand what I do, because in your mind, I was just a mechanic. She didn't have a good answer for that. We decided to take a break from the engagement. She moved most of her things out of my apartment the following weekend. We've talked a few times since then, but there's a fundamental disconnect that I'm not sure we can overcome. 3 months later, I'm still running my business. Still getting my hands dirty when an interesting restoration project comes in, and still proud of the path that got me here. Amber has reached out several times, wanting to try again. Her most recent text included a photo of her visiting my dealership, the first time she'd ever been inside, with a message saying she was trying to understand my world better. Maybe we'll work it out, maybe we won't. But one thing's for certain, I won't be hiding who I am or where I came from for anyone, especially not someone who's supposed to love me. And I'll never again let someone reduce me to just anything. Because the truth is, there's no such thing as just a mechanic. There are mechanics and they keep the world moving. Some of them, like me, build businesses. Others keep their focus on the craft itself. All of them deserve respect, not just the ones who end up with showrooms and websites. That's something Amber still needs to understand. Fancy dealership or not,